Living on the ranch just outside the small village of Hacienda El Refugio was an interesting time in our life as missionaries. The ranch, called Rancho Maranatha, was 13.5 acres and served as a missionary compound for several missionary families. For a time, there were 4 families living on the ranch, but shortly after we arrived on the field, 2 of the families left the field, leaving just us and Dawn's parents, John and Trudy Tucker. It was wonderful living way out in the country, wide open spaces, fresh vegetables from the garden, no phone, no internet. It was almost paradise. We could get reception to pick up 2 or 3 channels on the TV, but mostly watched videotapes on the VCR. My parents would tape TV shows and send them to us. We lived within walking distance of the village of El Refugio, but about 10 miles from the nearest town of Cadereyta, where we would go maybe once or twice a week to stores or the bank or a restaurant. The ranch was an hour away from the big city of Monterrey, where we'd also go to church on Sunday. Going into town or into the city was nice, but I always loved coming home to the peace and quiet and fresh air and green grass of the country. We had 3 horses and a cow which gave us more fresh milk than we knew what to do with. My in-laws hired some ranch hands, Flor and Mundo, to plow the fields with our horse named Prince, and plant everything from beans, beets, broccoli, and Brussels sprouts to corn, carrots, cauliflower, and cabbage, plus onions, peas, lettuce, and so much more. It was so nice to just walk outside and pick all the sweet corn we wanted for dinner. We also had a variety of fruit trees and pomegranate and pecan trees that my father-in-law had planted when they first bought the property. A beautiful orange grove was in one corner of the ranch, which gave us plenty of oranges, lemons, and grapefruit. In the winter, if it threatened to freeze, we would go out and light the smudge pots, 55-gallon drums half filled with diesel-soaked sawdust. This helped save some of the trees and fruit from freezing. There were many other citrus groves in that area of the country, so we could almost always get plenty of fruit. Sometimes there was a surplus of oranges because production was so high that supply exceeded demand, driving down the price. I remember a time when they were selling 1 ton of oranges for $10. That's a lot of orange juice. Down a path behind the big house where my in-laws lived, ran a stream that had a nice deep spot where it made a curve. This was a wonderful swimming hole that we all loved to jump into on hot summer days to cool off. The only downside to swimming there was that every time you got out of the water, you had half a dozen leeches stuck on your body, sucking your blood. We just pulled them off and jumped right back in. We also caught crayfish from the same stream and kept some in a fish tank as pets, and more in a pot for a tasty snack. An even better swimming place beyond Ejido Palmitos, not too far from the ranch, was Rio Ramos, where we would jump out of the trees along the banks and swing from ropes into the clear, deep blue water. Plus no leeches there. I will never forget the old white Ford pickup truck that was the iconic ranch vehicle. It was used for everything from collecting the hundreds of palm branches cut from the tall palms planted by my father-in-law all along the road, to harvesting corn or beans, to spreading manure all over the lawns as fertilizer. The old rattle trap was falling apart, the floorboards rusted through, the windshield cracked, the fender held in place with baling wire, but it kept going for as long as I can remember. It even towed a trailer full of kids around the ranch on their first hayride. The most prominent feature of the ranch, at least to me, was the 4-story high water tower / bell tower. It was a basic water tower, but with an adobe brick facade that made it look like an elegant work of architecture. The first floor was a workshop and tool room where all the gardening implements were stored. Lawnmower, weed eater, machetes, rakes, and shovels. A spiral staircase in the middle led up to the second floor, which was miscellaneous storage. Water skis, ice chests, old lamps, and projects in various stages of completion. Up the spiral stairs to the 3rd floor, which was the open belfry. A large cast iron bell hung from the ceiling. 3 arches adorned all 4 sides of this level, affording a nice view of the property. The top floor was the water tank, which supplied water to all the buildings and irrigation to the fields. You could climb the ladder up the outside of the tank to the very top, which was my favorite place on the ranch, high above the ground. I spent many hours up on the water tower, as it was the perfect place to get away to pray or just be alone. I even slept up there a few times. One of our favorite activities was rappelling down the side of the tower just for fun. During the summers on the ranch, we held what we called Pre-Bible Institute, or PBI. This was 4 consecutive weeks of Bible classes and other activities for young people from our church in Monterey. We had a time of worship every morning, with enthusiastic singing and strumming of guitars, followed by classes and other activities. The ranch was home to the Maranatha Bible Institute, where we trained young people for the ministry with classes in Bible, theology, church history, and more. Teaching was actually the best way for me to learn the language as a new missionary. Eventually, we built a huge Bible Institute building on the property adjacent to the ranch compound. Actually, it was built practically single-handedly by Maestro Nan, a local builder. Bible Institute staff and students helped with the construction, which took several years of digging and mixing and pouring concrete and laying block, one at a time. The building had classrooms, dorms, a kitchen and dining room, a library, and a chapel. After our son Paulie passed away, my dear old dad made a beautiful stained glass panel in his memory and came down and installed it in the chapel. They are together now in glory, and I can't wait to join them. When we began coordinating the annual medical brigades, we converted the Bible Institute building into a fully equipped medical and surgical center for 1 to 2 weeks a year for 11 consecutive years in the 80s and 90s, restoring sight to the blind and healing the sick. The rooms were converted into doctors' offices, laboratory, pharmacy, dental unit, operating room, and recovery ward. We treated thousands of patients and performed hundreds of surgeries free of charge over the years. For us, the ranch was a wonderful place to live and raise our first children during the 9+ years we lived there. It was our first home in Mexico and will always have a very special place in my heart with so many memories. It is where I proposed to my wife, where we got married, where we had so many birthday parties with piñatas in the backyard, Easter egg hunts, and other holiday celebrations. It is where our first son died and where we had his funeral, everyone dressed in white. The ranch was more than just a piece of property. It was a special, consecrated place that God provided for His service over the course of many, many years. Dawn and I bought the property when my in-laws retired, then later sold it to some other missionaries when we moved to Guadalajara. Sadly, it is not the same ranch that it once was, but in the back corners of my mind, it is still the magical paradise that I remember. Thank you so much for listening to this true story from Memoirs of Mexico. If you enjoyed this story, or if it was a blessing to you, please feel free to like and subscribe to my channel. That would be a blessing to me. I upload a new true story every day. If you like to read, you can also order Memoirs of Mexico in paperback or ebook on Amazon.com. There's a link in the description. Thanks again for listening.